As I get older, the concept of family has much more meaning to me than ever before. Adult males have extremely high expectations when it comes to providing for their families, protecting them from the horrors of the world, and doing so all without losing their composure. Arigato by Naoki Yamamoto explores those themes in a very brutal and unforgiving fashion. The manga opens up with a household under siege from a local gang where the family is being abused. The daughters are being raped, and the mother is in an alcohol induced catatonic state. Opening up with such a frightening, feverish sequence, it feels very David Lynch esque, but it really does captivate the reader, or maybe even chases them away. In the middle of all this chaos, the father of the household, Ichiro Suzuki, returns home from a years long trip working abroad and instantly declares war on the gang as a means of protecting his family and making up for lost time. However, the daughters, Takako and Akiko, are horrified by the assault they've just received and their father's nonchalant reappearance. They were just raped multiple times in their own home, and their dad is reluctant to involve the police. The following chapters are tempered with a bleak, downtrodden mood, with an increasing amount of dark humor coming from Ichiro's perspective. The incredible amount of ultra violence in the first volume of this manga is definitely something that will test a reader. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but emotionally, it's so tense and hurtful because you're seeing the aftermath of what happens. I know we always make jokes in the anime community about waifus and harems and all of those other inappropriate ecchi jokes, but this manga actually looks at the real life ramifications of that. It is worth powering through the early chapters. Ultimately, this is a manga about a morally corrupt family who despises one another, and we see the events that eventually lead up to the dissolution of a nuclear household. At no point in time do you really pull for these characters. With the exception of one, they're all bad people. When the daughters do stupid things, you scream at them, knowing that they're making these dumb decisions because of their age and depression, but you also empathize with them because you're fully aware that they've never had proper guidance. The mother, while well written, is also a very frustrating character, and her anchor like presence on the household is strongly felt in the later chapters. This contrasts well with the father's overbearing, Peter Griffin esque persona. In fact, I sense a strong similarity to classic American cartoon dads as I do with Ichiro. He is a loving father, but a bumbling moron who's more worried about making up for lost time instead of trying to work hard and fix the now. Arigato is an ambitious story that accomplishes most of the feats set out. The art is spellbinding. That's the best description for my emotions that I have towards it. Manga had such a unique aesthetic during the 90s. Arigato looks very dated and of its era, but there's so much emotion despite a thinly bordered cast and barren backgrounds making up a vast majority of the four volumes. Pay attention to how the art refines itself throughout the series run. The writing is top notch. The ending of the story has some unpredictable twists and resolutions that will make you want to immediately reread Arigato from the very beginning, so you can pick up on some of the things that you may have missed. It does open up as a depressing, no hope seinen with strong depictions of graphic violence, but after the first volume, the story evolves with the way it presents its brand of dread and despair. It becomes a slice of life, as per usual, but it's still an enjoyable experience that you want to see all of the way through. I implore you to give Arigato a shot. It's one of those manga that you read it once, you read it again a couple years later, you may come across it more and more times throughout your life, but you can always pull something from it, from one of the characters, and it'll resonate with you differently. As I mentioned, it offers a very realistic example of how a family can break down. And whether you have had a great relationship with your family or a pretty shitty one, you can see how they all try to put up with one another, but then it slowly dawns on them that I got to move away from my kid, or I got to move away from my mom. Maybe it's better if I only talk to my dad once a year. Maybe it's better if my sister and I only text. Those are things that everyone kind of comes to a realization about as they get older. And to see this in a manga from the era that it came from is really interesting. But I think the best part of Arigato is that the mangaka never goes out of their way to make these characters redeemable. They don't change. They just learn to live with their trauma and get on with life. And that to me is a very realistic portrayal of how one grows out of their family. Arigato is a seinen classic. If you liked Himizu, Poon Poon, Oyaji, then you'll enjoy this as well. 8 out of 10.